I was 33 when my grandfather, Robert Hayes, looked me straight in the eyes and made me promise something that didn't make any sense. He was lying in a private room at Mercy Hospital in Des Moines, Iowa. The doctors had already explained that his heart wasn't going to recover. He knew it. We all knew it. Yet he seemed strangely calm, almost relieved, as if he had spent years waiting for this exact conversation. He reached toward the nightstand with trembling hands and slid a small brass key across the blanket. "There's a wooden box in the attic," he whispered. "It's locked. Don't open it. Not until after my funeral." I frowned. "Why?" His tired blue eyes met mine for a long moment. "Because if you open it before then, you'll never believe anything I ever taught you." Before I could ask another question, a nurse stepped inside to check his medication. Grandpa leaned back against his pillow and closed his eyes. The conversation was over. 3 days later, he was gone. My grandfather wasn't just family. After my parents died in a car accident when I was 14, he became everything: a father, a mentor, and the one person I trusted without question. He taught me how to rebuild old trucks, balance a checkbook, shake a man's hand, and keep my word even when it hurt. So when he asked me not to open the box, I honored his request. His funeral took place on a gray Thursday morning at a small church outside Cedar Falls. Friends, neighbors, veterans from his old American Legion post, and people I'd never met filled every pew. Everyone had a story about Robert Hayes, how he'd quietly paid someone's mortgage during hard times or fixed a stranger's roof without accepting a dollar. Listening to them, I realized there were entire chapters of his life I had never known. That evening, after every relative had finally gone home, I stood alone inside his farmhouse. The silence felt different now, almost expectant. I climbed the narrow attic stairs with the old brass key clenched tightly in my hand. The wooden box was exactly where Grandpa said it would be, hidden beneath a faded army blanket. It was heavy, handmade from dark oak, with deep scratches carved across the lid as though someone had tried to force it open years ago. My pulse quickened. I slid the key into the lock. It clicked. I lifted the lid, and the very first thing I saw made me question everything I thought I knew about my grandfather. Inside the box wasn't gold, cash, or family jewelry. It was a stack of neatly organized envelopes tied together with faded red twine, an old leather journal, and a black USB flash drive with a single handwritten label. For Ethan. My name. My grandfather had written it himself. For a few seconds, I just stared. Then I noticed another envelope resting on top of everything else. Across the front, in the same careful handwriting I'd seen on birthday cards my entire life, were the words, "Read this first." My hands were shaking as I unfolded the letter. "If you're reading this, then you've kept your promise. That means I can finally tell you the truth." I swallowed hard. "Everything you know about your parents' accident is incomplete." My heart skipped. The official report had always been simple. A drunk driver crossed the center line on Highway 20 during a rainstorm. My parents died instantly. Case closed. That's what everyone, including Grandpa, had told me for almost 20 years. So why was he calling it incomplete? I kept reading. "Someone wanted you to believe it was only an accident." I felt the room grow colder. The words blurred as my breathing became uneven. There was no explanation, only another instruction. "Before you read the journal, plug in the USB drive and watch the video. Do not skip it." I looked at the flash drive lying beside the journal. It suddenly felt heavier than it should. I carried everything downstairs and placed the laptop on Grandpa's old kitchen table, the same table where we'd spent countless evenings rebuilding fishing reels and solving crossword puzzles. Outside, the Iowa wind rattled the windows. The farmhouse creaked the way old houses always do. For the first time since the funeral, it didn't feel like home. It felt like I had walked into someone else's life. I inserted the USB drive. Only one video file appeared. Its title froze me in place. "Record this if I don't make it." April 18th, 2005. That date hit me like a punch. It was exactly 3 days before my parents died. My finger hovered over the trackpad. Every instinct told me not to press play. If Grandpa had hidden this for nearly 2 decades, there had to be a reason. But another part of me needed answers more than it feared the truth. I took a slow breath and clicked the video. The screen flickered. Grandpa's face appeared. He looked almost 20 years younger. Then he leaned toward the camera and said the one sentence I never imagined hearing. "Ethan, if you're watching this, your parents were murdered and the man responsible was standing beside me at my own son's funeral. I couldn't move. The video kept playing, but my mind was stuck on that single sentence. Your parents were murdered. Grandpa looked exhausted. His hair was darker than I remembered, but the fear in his eyes was unmistakable. Every few seconds, he glanced toward the window, as if he expected someone to pull into the driveway. If you're seeing this, he said quietly, then I waited too long to tell you the truth. I wanted to protect you, but I also made the biggest mistake of my life. He reached off camera and held up a newspaper. The headline was dated April 19th, 2005. Everyone believed Daniel and Emily Hayes died because of a drunk driver. That's exactly what someone wanted. Daniel and Emily. Hearing my parents' names spoken by Grandpa instead of your mom and dad made the entire video feel painfully real. He unfolded a highway map of eastern Iowa and pointed to a section of U.S. Highway 20. The crash happened here, he said. But the police never investigated what happened 15 minutes earlier. He paused, taking a slow breath. Your father called me. I felt every muscle in my body tighten. He told me someone had been following them since they left Cedar Rapids. A black SUV. No license plate on the front. He sounded scared. Grandpa lowered his head. I told him to drive straight to the nearest sheriff's office. His voice cracked. They never made it. I stared at the screen, barely breathing. Grandpa reached into his jacket pocket and placed a folded document on the table in front of the camera. I kept this because I knew someday someone would try to erase it. He unfolded it carefully. It was a photocopy of an official police report. Across the top, in bold red letters, someone had stamped one word. Confidential. The report listed a witness whose statement had never appeared in the public investigation. According to that witness, my parents' truck had not crossed the center line. Instead, a dark SUV had forced them off the road seconds before the collision. The witness disappeared 2 days later. No follow-up. No public record. Nothing. Grandpa looked directly into the camera again. I spent 20 years trying to figure out who buried this evidence. He swallowed hard. And 3 months ago, I finally found the answer. He reached for another folder just out of view. I wrote the name down because I knew I might not live long enough to tell you myself. My heart pounded as he slowly opened the folder. Then the video suddenly cut to black. No ending. No name. Just silence. For nearly a minute, I sat there staring at the black screen, hoping the video would continue. It didn't. My hands were trembling so badly, I almost dropped the USB drive. Then I remembered the leather journal. Grandpa had told me not to read it until after watching the video. Now I understood why. I carried it back to the kitchen table and carefully opened the first page. Most of it contained dates, license plate numbers, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes from almost 20 years of quiet investigation. He had never stopped searching. Page after page documented phone calls, meetings, and names of people who had either refused to talk or suddenly changed their stories. Then I reached the final page. A single sealed envelope was taped inside. Across the front were 5 words. Only if you need proof. I peeled it open. Inside was one photograph. It had clearly been taken at my parents' funeral. The image showed my grandfather standing beside several mourners outside the church. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then I looked closer. Standing only a few feet behind Grandpa was a man wearing a black suit and dark sunglasses. His face looked familiar. Too familiar. I turned the photograph over. On the back, Grandpa had written only one sentence. This is the man who ordered it. Below the sentence, a name. Richard Lawson. The same Richard Lawson who had spent the last 15 years serving as the respected mayor of Cedar Falls. I couldn't believe what I was reading. The next morning, I drove straight to the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation with Grandpa's journal, the photograph, the confidential report, and the USB drive. Unlike 20 years ago, every piece of evidence could now be digitally verified. Within weeks, investigators uncovered financial records, deleted communications, and testimony from a retired deputy who finally admitted that evidence had been buried under political pressure. Months later, Richard Lawson was arrested. The investigation revealed he had ordered my father's death after discovering that Dad was preparing to expose a multi-million-dollar public corruption scheme involving county contracts. My parents hadn't died because they were unlucky. They died because they refused to stay silent. A year has passed since then. Grandpa's farmhouse is mine now. The wooden box still sits on the shelf in my office, exactly where I can see it every day. Sometimes I think about how close the truth came to disappearing forever. If Grandpa had never asked me to wait until after his funeral, if I had ignored his final request, the people responsible might never have faced justice. That old wooden box didn't just unlock a family secret. It gave my parents their truth back, and it gave me the chance to finally stop living a lie.